Well, the 49ers signed a player today. New addition to the roster. Not every day during the offseason do we get to say that. Not every day during the offseason do we get to cover that. But today we get to talk about the new safety, Quindell Johnson, who becomes part of the 49ers 90-man roster. A lot of outstanding questions at safety, and also one question really answered during this past 2024 season. What would Malik Mustafa become for the 49ers? Well, it seems that Malik Mustafa is on his way to becoming a real legitimate player for the 49ers. Delivered as a rookie, he's a fixture. He's a projected fixture moving forward into 2025. But why'd they bring in Quindell Johnson, a 25-year-old, went to Memphis, had been around the league for 3 years, played a lot of special teams during a year with the Chicago Bears. His time with the Rams did not see him actually take the field on the active roster. That was just practice squad time for Quindell Johnson. But in that one season with Chicago, 35 defensive snaps and 106 special team snaps. I think it's important to look at the 49ers situation at safety, and I've already penciled in Quindell Johnson here. You know, when I do my breakdown of the roster, I divide it into who I project to make the 53-man roster and who I project to just be on the 90-man roster throughout the offseason. Now, those players will have a chance to make the practice squad once they cut down to 53. So it's not necessarily, hey, you have to be on the 53-man projection now to contribute to the football team. But as far as how the 49ers are building this, how they're envisioning this, I think Quindell Johnson is going to have to prove himself as 53-man roster-worthy material. He's going to have the offseason program. He's going to have OTAs. He's going to have training camp. But then if he still finds a way to keep himself in the building on the practice squad, he'll have the season to do that. But at the safety position specifically, and we could zoom in here, Jair Brown had a down year. He wasn't as good as he was as a rookie this past season as the burden increased on him in that second season, especially with Talanoa Hufanga out for a very, very large part of it. Malik Mustafa had a very good rookie season, and you could tell the 49ers firmly believe in Malik. George Odom, he's still under contract. He's one of the better special teams players in the league, but that's who George Odom is at this time. They're not looking at George Odom as one of their starting two safeties. So the big question is, will Quindell Johnson have a chance to crack a 4-safety rotation in the 53-man roster? And is that chance a realistic one? And a lot of it will come back down to, is Talanoa Hufanga going to return to the 49ers or not? I find Talanoa to be in a very similar boat as Dre Greenlaw in that he's an impact player at a different position, obviously, than Dre, but an impact player who hasn't had a chance to put all too much football on tape over the course of the past season. And because of that, you might look at a one-year prove-it deal as being the market for Hufanga. Today, I saw there was some kind of PFF projection for Dre Greenlaw. It said there's going to be a lot of interest in Greenlaw, but then one of the conclusions was he's going to be able to sign a deal for $5 to $6 million in 1 year. That, to me, sounds a lot like a prove-it deal, like a prove-it plus deal, right? Prove-it deal is going to be 1 year long. But if it's a prove it plus, then it's going to add some guaranteed money and it's going to be worth more than the league minimum. Well, if Dre Greenlaw commands that, I think the 49ers will be very interested in keeping him. What about Talanoa Hufanga at the safety position? Is it going to be something similar? Is it going to be a few million 1 year? Is it going to be something where the 49ers can push some of the cap hit back through void years so they can fit it into their 2025 structure and beyond? We'll see. But that all plays together with this signing of Quindell Williams and with the depth that the 49ers are looking to build at the safety position. They also have Jaylen Mahoney on the 90-man roster. He's going to be a second-year man coming out of Vanderbilt. Mahoney played a lot of special teams for the 49ers this past season, and they like him. I know they like him, but safety is a position where one misstep at safety and a big play happens. I mean, there's a lot of potential risk at safety, and you saw it with Jair Brown this past year. Once he started missing tackles, it became a big problem for the 49ers. Wasn't ready to play the run the way that he needed him to. A lot of people, when they talk about the 49ers run defense, which dropped down to number 29 in the league this year, will say, well, the defensive line wasn't doing its job. It was the defensive line's fault. And run defense, especially if you watch this 49ers team, I know that they had some struggles at defensive tackle. I know there was some struggles at edge rusher when Nick Bosa wasn't in there. But this was an all-11 type of thing. And the linebacker unit wasn't doing what it needed to do without Dre Greenlaw. And the safeties especially were really struggling to tackle for the 49ers this season. And Jair Brown, I think, was struggling the most out of the safeties in that department. Malik Mustafa was actually a plus for San Francisco. So somebody like Quindell Johnson, only those 35 defensive snaps. It's really hard to judge what kind of player he's going to be. 6'2", 208, prototypical size for 49ers safety. He had 10 interceptions in college at Memphis. And then he went to the NFL where he did have that 1 year that he saw some more time on the worst team that he played for. That Chicago team that he played for wasn't as good as the Rams team that he was part of the practice squad with. So he had a chance to deliver on special teams. And what's interesting is that the coordinator, Richard Hightower, for special teams that he played under, is the 49ers' former special teams coordinator. Maybe he's still friends with Kyle Shanahan. I know they were college buddies, Hightower, Kyle Shanahan, on the same Texas Longhorns football team. So obviously the 49ers do see some potential. This is a 1-year reserve future deal. And it was accompanied by some other news. A former 49er, Ronnie Bell, a lot of people wanted him cut, and he eventually was cut. He has signed with the Detroit Lions. So Ronnie Bell on his way to Detroit. He's now on their 90-man roster. He'll have a chance to prove himself, make either the 53 or the practice squad. I know a lot of 49ers fans are chuckling about that. You know, at the end of the day, Ronnie was a 7th-round draft pick. And Detroit is close to Michigan. Michigan is where Ronnie Bell went to school. College football under Jim Harbaugh. What is Ann Arbor, like 30 minutes away from Detroit, 40 minutes away from Detroit? So now he's going to be trying to make the team to play at Ford Field, trying to have Jared Goff throw the football to him next season. So Ronnie Bell, 2 seasons with the 49ers. They obviously weren't glamorous. There are obviously some big gaffes in those seasons. The drop against the Rams is the one that 49ers fans will remember most, but he is off to a different team now as the 49ers have picked up another safety. Looking at San Francisco's roster as a whole, how many more spots do they have to fill? I have a counter on here. 59 out of 90 roster spots now full for the 49ers. So that means 31 spots left. They've got 10 draft picks coming, by the way. That is still a projection for San Francisco, but it should be 10. They have 6 of their own. Their 5th-round pick was stripped by the NFL for an accounting error. Then they have 3 they have 3 player compensatory picks, 2 4th-rounders, Chase Young and Sam Darnold left, so the 49ers played that comp game well, and a 7th-round compensatory pick for the departure of Ray McLeod, plus a 3rd-round compensatory pick. That is a combined coach exec departure, the minority hiring incentive. That is for Rand Carthon and D'Amico Ryans, both heading to different teams with promotions. So that adds up to 10 draft picks for the 49ers. If you look at the roster with 31 spots left, well, if all 10 draft picks make the team, that still means that they have 21 free agents that they're going to need to sign to fill out the 90-man roster. And that's something that they definitely want fully done by OTAs. In 2 months, mid-March, is when the floodgates are going to open in terms of free agency. Right now, the 49ers can sign players who are not under contract, but even guys on expiring contracts with other teams, they will remain under contract through March. For example, Devondre Campbell, he's never going to set foot in the 49ers building again. Who knows if he's ever going to set foot in an NFL building again, but he technically can't sign with anybody until March. He's technically still under contract with the 49ers. That's just how it works. We're still in the old league year. 4 teams are finishing up the playoffs. And then once the new league year starts in March, the 49ers will be able to begin a signing spree. They could sign guys now, but I can guarantee you that the vast majority of the 31 open spots still remaining on this roster will be filled after the new league year starts in March. But guys like Ronnie Bell, guys like Quindell Johnson, they can sign with different teams right now. You guys can probably sign a new sandwich to the roster. By the way, you're probably wondering about the sweater tonight. Well, the sweater tonight, deli board in saloon font. I'm going to talk over here into the microphone so my voice doesn't disappear. They're on Folsom and 7th Street in San Francisco. Maybe the best sandwich in the world. We'll be doing a bigger feature on them in a little bit. But Adam gave me the sweater, saloon font, deli board. I've shown the 49er sandwich from deli board. Adam's from Cleveland, big Browns fan. Took inspiration from some of the sandwiches in Cleveland. And we took inspiration from Adam tonight for grilled cheese night. Yes, it was very good. Like fresh steak in the grilled cheese tonight. There were 2 types of grilled cheese. You're looking at the honey roasted turkey, Swiss cheese, and raspberry jam one. And now you can look at the steak one with lovingly caramelized onions. The loving wife has brought some grilled cheese straight to me right now as you guys are taking a look at the steak grilled cheese. That is the finished product. Lombardi yourself has just left. Timing was absolutely perfect. This is the honey roasted turkey, Swiss cheese, and raspberry jam grilled cheese. The crunch is going to be epic. That's good. She says thank you. I say thank you. Yes, that's why I married you. So we're building up quite the roster here of sandwiches. And I'm glad I'm wearing the deli board shirt today on grilled cheese night. Again, honey roasted turkey, Swiss cheese, raspberry jam. I'm going to continue enjoying this. And then I'm going to answer some of your 49ers questions. Why don't we go to 49ers Q&A? Why don't we put this back up on the screen? We're out of the steak one, but this turkey one, this is the first one that Margot ever made me 4 years ago. And I still remember it. It's almost like a dessert sandwich with some of that jam in it. Here, we could go back to the start of this. And we could even have a little sound. Listen to this. You'll hear the crackle. Isn't that a great sound? Really nice. Look at that. Awesome. All right. I'm going to eat this a little bit later. I know it's disrespectful to you guys if I sit here eating grilled cheese too long, but grilled cheese night was awesome. Okay, let's go for it. We got a 49ers Q&A coming up. Why San Francisco signed Quindell Johnson? Well, I think I explained it. I don't think that we need to get too far into the weeds with a 90-man roster signing for the 49ers. It is something they definitely need to do at the safety position. I think that both Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw fall into a similar boat in that the 49ers want both of these guys back at the right price. Tomorrow on the San Francisco Standard, I'm going to have a big piece on the 49ers salary cap. We're calling it Purdynomics. How the 49ers are going to continue to expand this roster. That's not the roster. That's the grilled cheese sandwich. This roster around Brock Purdy. I also have my salary cap sheet, which we'll refer to right now. But all of this ties together. Here's the salary cap sheet. Because your ability to re-sign Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw depends directly on your management of the salary cap year over year. The 2025 books have $46.3 million. The piece that I have coming out on the Standard tomorrow states that the 49ers have about $35 million in effective salary cap space for the 2025 season. Effective cap space means the space that will be left over once their roster hits 53 men. So there are still signings to make, obviously. Right now, I project the 49ers with 40 players on their 53-man roster. This is all fluid. Will they increase spending at some of the minimum spots? Will they decrease spending at some of the spots? I'll tell you one thing that will almost certainly happen this offseason. George Kittle is sitting here with a $22 million cap hit George Kittle's cap hit is probably going to go down significantly this offseason because they're going to extend him. So by extending George Kittle, just look at this. We got $46 million in cap space listed at the top. If you lower Kittle's cap hit from $10 million or from $22 million to $10 million, I just did right now, that's $58 million in cap space. Brock Purdy's cap hit, as you guys know through my big article projecting Brock Purdy's contract, will probably only increase from about $5 million where it's at right now to $15.1 million. So the $10 million that Brock Purdy is going to cost in 2025, for the short term at least, can essentially be covered by an extension for George Kittle. And why is that? Because an extension for George Kittle would spread his cap hit out further into future years. It would come with a big signing bonus. This is how the 49ers have surfed the wave of the rising salary cap. Now, they have to be really, really decisive with some of these auxiliary players. And yes, Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga, because they have not been A-list superstars over the past year, you cannot classify them as such. So you've got to be very particular with what you're going to pay players who, by definition, are supporting cast players until they prove themselves to be available A-listers again. Otherwise, you're going to overflow that sink of the salary cap and this whole equation that the 49ers have been diligently working on over the years to keep the cap situation as healthy as it is, even though all these star players will be out of whack. So you got to be really careful. You can't just go out and be the Saints, who signed Chase Young last year for $13 million. Chase Young made $13 million from the Saints this year. For perspective, the 49ers 10-player draft class, all 10 players, once they sign them, will cost $13 million total. So that gives you an idea of cap efficiency, right? If the 49ers can nail this 2025 draft class, those 10 players will cost a combined $13 million. Those 10 players will cost the same amount that Chase Young alone cost the New Orleans Saints. Plus, the departure of Chase Young, the fact the 49ers weren't willing to match New Orleans in bidding for Chase Young means that they're going to get a fourth-round draft pick in return for him. So one of the 10 picks that is infinitely cheaper, like way, way cheaper than Chase Young, right? One of the 10 picks comes from the fact that the 49ers let Young walk. I'm just illustrating San Francisco's salary cap machinations and their reliance on the draft to keep things and costs manageable, because they've given out more A-list contracts than any other team in football ever since Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch arrived. So that was in 2017. They've given up 9 A-list contracts. Brock Purdy is going to be number 10, unless George Kittle re-signs before him. In that case, George Kittle will be number 10. So you can expect number 10 and number 11 this offseason. It probably isn't crazy to think that Deebo Samuel might get extended too, although that's a little bit more complicated, because I think if they can extend him at an on-A-list level, the 49ers will happily do it. But Deebo is not as clear of a fit for this team. He might be on the decline, might not be, but he's not as clear of a fit for this team as Brock Purdy and George Kittle are. But it's still a cap number that the 49ers might be willing to adjust through the power of an extension. Just how the NFL works, just giving you guys a little bit of intel. Anyway, it all ties together because you have to be able to fit the puzzle pieces of Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw into this game of financial Tetris if they're going to remain on the roster. And in case you can't fit somebody like Talanoa Hufanga, you're going to have to stack safety depth behind him. And boom, that is where Quindell Johnson comes into play for the 49ers. So he's not going to be on the cap sheet, but he's going to be on this 90-man roster right here alongside Jaylen Mahoney looking in on the 53-man. Remember, the 49ers normally carry 4 safeties on the 53-man. Malik's one of your guys if you're San Francisco. Jair Brown, despite the down year, I think he remains one of your guys if you're the 49ers. Maybe not a starter. Maybe they're looking to upgrade at that position, but I think they're still going to be taking their swings with Jair Brown. George Odom is one of your guys as a special teams player, but he's not really one of your serious safeties on this team. So as of right now, there are one, maybe 2 spots to vie for on the 53-man, and then injuries happen on top of that, and that's where Quindell Johnson is competing. If you guys want a Robert Saleh update, why don't we do that really quick? The Liam Cohn, Robert Saleh dynamic. I was talking about this a little bit earlier. Some water was also part of the shipment from Lombardi herself. She was really clever. The way she came in here didn't even show up on camera. Somehow contorted herself around it. But ice water, very good. And we can talk about the 49ers coaching situation. The Robert Saleh interview is scheduled in Jacksonville on Friday. But Liam Cohn, who is the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is interviewing tomorrow with Jacksonville. Robert Stroud, who covers Tampa Bay and knows how the Bucs are thinking, says that the Bucs are preparing for Liam Cohn to be offered that job in Jacksonville. If that ends up being the case, well, assuming that the Raiders or the Dallas Cowboys don't offer Robert Saleh to be their head coach, Saleh also interviewed there, it would seem that the path would be clear for Saleh to sign with the 49ers. However, none of that is clear right now. This is informed speculation at best, I think, from Stroud over in Tampa Bay, that Liam Cohn is the front runner for the Jacksonville job. I do think that there is a lot of sense behind hiring an offensive-minded head coach. Just because if you lose your head coach and if you lose your offensive coordinator and your defensive-minded head coach, which tends to happen in this league, if you have some success, you have to replace the entire brains of your offense. You're seeing it happen in Detroit right now. Ben Johnson leaves to the Chicago Bears, and now Dan Campbell has to start over with an offense that was at the top of the league this past season. And a lot of people have been crediting Ben Johnson as the brains of that offense. So you would think, because 7 of the last 8 Super Bowl winners have been offensive-minded coaches, with the 8th being Bill Belichick, obviously a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest coaches of all time. You would think that the trend is toward hiring offensive coaches. Maybe that's where this energy toward Liam Cohn, the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Bucs, is coming from. And if that is the case, Robert Saleh, as a defensive-minded coach, might be free by the end of this head coach hiring cycle to come to the 49ers. There's also the entire Trent Baalke dynamic. And Baalke is the GM in Jacksonville right now, the former 49ers GM, and he does not have a good reputation around the National Football League. Trent was the GM when Jim Harbaugh got fired, and I don't think it was right that the 49ers fired Jim Harbaugh. Baalke somehow survived Harbaugh, and then he survived Jim Tom Sula. He didn't survive Chip Kelly. He got fired alongside Chip Kelly, and then he went to Jacksonville. But in Jacksonville, he's survived Doug Peterson. He convinced the owner, Shad Khan, to fire Peterson and not him. Anyway, if you're Robert Saleh, you just got fired out of a dysfunctional situation with the New York Jets. Woody Johnson, the owner, fired you because he was embarrassed that his friends from the United Kingdom, his British friends, had to see the Jets lose in their abroad game, in their UK game. I don't think that's a great reason to fire somebody. It seems like something that a 5-year-old running a team would do. But that is what Woody Johnson did. And Robert Saleh out of a job in large part because of that, ultimately because of that. You normally only get 2 cracks at an NFL head coaching job, if that. So, a third chance is unheard of if you don't have enough success over the course of the first 2. So I think the last thing you want to do if you're Robert Saleh is leave one toxic situation and join another. And I think 49ers fans know that Trent Baalke is really good at creating toxic situations. So that's going to be really interesting to see. Even if that job is offered to Saleh, is he going to take it knowing that Trent Baalke is there as GM of Jacksonville? But that is what the 49ers seem to currently be waiting on. We talked about international game possibilities today as well for San Francisco. This was something I already talked about last week. It seemed to be recycled reporting today and other places. But yes, the 49ers can potentially go to London. Speaking of that, that would be a game against the Cleveland Browns. And they can potentially go to Berlin. That would be a game against the Indianapolis Colts. Mexico City remains on the table as well, although we're still waiting for details of who's going to host that football game. All right, guys, now we truly are ready for 49ers questions. That grilled cheese is good. I can't wait to take some further bites of it. Let's go. I'm ready. Could I ever see an international Super Bowl? By the way, Chris, thanks for the email. We have an idea. We'll be getting back to you here shortly. No, I can't see an international Super Bowl. The Super Bowl, I think that would be blasphemous. I think the NFL, I think the National Football League has to keep the Super Bowl in the U.S. I mean, that would be crazy. It's kind of breaking my brain thinking of it. That being said, maybe they're visionaries. Maybe they really want to make this a global sport. And if it catches fire as a global sport, then you could see the Super Bowl elsewhere. But we're still a long, long way from that. The main problem is the problem of time zones, right? The Super Bowl needs to start at about 3 p.m. Pacific time, and that is 6 p.m. Eastern time. So Europe, the UK is 5 hours ahead of Eastern time. That means that it would have to start at 11 p.m. It's the middle of the night in the UK, midnight in Central Europe. I don't think that's going to be happening. I cannot see an international Super Bowl just because of the time zones. Where do I go in San Francisco for Italian food? I wouldn't go to Ghirardelli Square or the Wharf unless you go to, if you're going to go to the Wharf, go to Scoma's. That's really the only place I could think of to like heartily recommend as far as it's seafood. It's Scoma's. It's over right by the Dolphin Club if you're in Fisherman's Wharf. But if you're going to go get Italian food in San Francisco, then you should probably stick with North Beach. That's Little Italy. That's the Italian neighborhood. So go to North Beach. Cafe Ideale on Grant is going to be really good. Bocconcino is going to be really good on Green Street. Or one of my favorites is called Amarena. That's not in North Beach. It's in Russian Hill. It's on Green and Larkin. I used to live on Larkin. I should have known that. But yeah, it's on Green and Larkin. It's about a block and a half away. Those are two really good recommendations from me. Reyes Deli on the list. Reyes Deli is Reyes Deli is awesome. They're one of my honorable mention top sandwiches in San Francisco. That's going to be coming soon. Should be ready for that. What are the biggest holes currently on the 49ers roster? Well, why don't we take a look? This is a good exercise. This is always worth it when we're going through some of this stuff. The biggest holes on the roster, I would say you got to get a backup quarterback, unless you believe Mordecai can graduate to that. I don't think that's going to be the case. I like where they're at running back. I really do. I mean, between McCaffrey and Garendo, both of those guys are going to be healthy next season to begin. That's a really, really explosive 1-2 punch. Of course, you need more depth, but I'm not going to call the fact that they're missing a running back 3 on January 21st as a whole. I think that would be a little bit dramatic. Wide receiver, I don't really see a hole there either. I think the 49ers are in really, really good shape at that wide receiver position. Now, that might change. There might be some maneuvers, maybe even before the trade deadline. I know a lot of people are talking about the future of Deebo Samuel. I think everything could be on the table with Deebo Samuel right now. It's going to be really interesting to see exactly how the 49ers proceed entering the lame duck year of his contract. But that's a position of strength, especially with Ricky Pearsall coming along. Then you've got the tight end position. Now, yes, that is a hole. Tight end 2 is a hole for San Francisco. The 49ers need to fortify themselves beyond George Kittle. And they've been saying this for years. And they had a little bit of a fortification there with Charlie Werner, but he wasn't a good pass catcher. So they haven't given themselves a chance to truly take this offense to its complete limits. And that would be if you had a tight end 2 who could catch the ball and run routes. But I cannot leave this discussion of the 49ers tight ends without emphasizing that Charlie Werner did a hell of a job run blocking for the 49ers. You guys remember when Christian McCaffrey essentially sealed the NFC Championship game? Go rewatch that tape. McCaffrey running down the near sideline, pushed out of bounds right before Elijah Mitchell punches it in to give the 49ers a 10-point lead. Well, if you think of that moment, you'll see Charlie Warner with an awesome kick-out block. And it wasn't the only time that Charlie Warner delivered for the 49ers at tight end too. Right now, they didn't have Warner in 2000 and that was in 2023. They didn't have Warner in 2024. I think that the offense did suffer because of it. They didn't have that blocking presence. But they could still go beyond that. They could get somebody like Warner and somebody who can also catch the ball. That's why people, myself included, are enamored with Tyler Warren out of Penn State. He might be around pick number 11. You might be able to get a truly plus player in Tyler Warren, who's 6'6", 261 pounds, can catch the ball, can run routes. You might be able to get that kind of talent when a premium offensive tackle talent may not be on the board anymore. You might have to trade up to get a really good offensive tackle at 11. That's why I advocate for best player available when we're looking at how the 49ers construct things. Because if you go best player available, you will get a best shot at blue chip talent. And blue chip talent is what's going to rise this boat most effectively. So anyway, tight end 2 I see as a legitimate hole on this 49ers roster. Then we move to the offensive line. No more Aaron Banks on this roster. This is 2025. I've not included the players who are on expiring contracts. So for the time being, I've had Spencer Burford move over to left tackle or left guard. He played some left tackle then last season. What does that mean? Well, do the 49ers need a fortified left guard? Or do they believe that Burford can successfully handle that role and improve upon Banks, who did not have a great 2024? Center, I see as a position of weakness, even though Jake Brendel is still under contract. Right guard, I now see as a strength. Right tackle can be improved, although did get better last year next to Dominic Pooney. The rule with offensive linemen is that you need more than 5. 5 quality bodies is not enough in the NFL to withstand a marathon of a season. You need more than 5 quality offensive linemen. You need, I think, at least 7. 8 is preferable. The teams that end up withstanding the marathon and winning a title usually have about 7 to 8 very quality offensive linemen, guys that they can plug and play, guys that can be interchangeable, especially in this day and age, where it is rare to have an offensive line room that deep. You can really differentiate yourself. 49ers fans are a little extreme with their complaints about the offensive line because other teams are also complaining about their offensive line. Not every team. The Philadelphia Eagles have a great one, but maybe they should be an example to strive toward, right? I just think that people need to keep some perspective. The 49ers don't have the very worst unit in the league, but they don't have the kind of unit that can push them through right now and be relied upon as the engine of the football team. And I think that to improve that unit, you just need to add talent in general. It's not necessarily a center. Well, center might be the most specific position that you can add. I've talked about that, but it's not necessarily a left guard or a tackle or a right guard. How about you just add quality bodies that can make this unit more immune to the rigors of the regular season and therefore a better pass blocking and run blocking unit? But if I have to get specific, yes, I will say that the center position is something that the 49ers should target specifically in free agency. Then we go down to the defensive side of the ball. I think defensive tackle has been a point of concern now for a couple years. I don't want to denigrate the play of Malik Collins. I think that he was a good pass rusher this past season. Jordan Elliott wasn't a good pass rusher, but he was a good run defender for the 49ers. But they just didn't have quite enough juice to have a defensive line that completely took over games. I know that the injury issues that extended to Yetur Gross-Matos over the course of this season were definitely a factor for the 49ers. But anybody can look at this roster and say they could use a little bit more punch at defensive tackle and at defensive end. I know that Nick Bosa likes all the players they have in the building, and that's totally fair, but you can always add a little bit more punch. And maybe with one of their first 2 draft picks, the 49ers are able to do that along the defensive line. Then you've got a glaring hole, and that one is at the linebacker position. Linebacker is a spot that is just the glue to San Francisco's defense. His defense is not surging without a number 2 to Fred Warner. And he's the Robin to the Batman at that spot. And that's why we talked about signing Dre Greenlaw at the top of this show. If Dre does come back and he does prove to be decently durable for the 49ers, linebacker is much less of a worry. But as we have seen over the course of the last season plus, and this goes back to the Super Bowl after Greenlaw tore his Achilles, it's a big, big concern. They're so linebacker reliant. And we can't really answer the question of Greenlaw until we answer the question of who the defensive coordinator is going to be. If it's likely going to be Robert Saleh, well, I think that lends more reason for Dre Greenlaw to return because he played under Robert Saleh for the first 2 years of his career. But until that's certain, that domino is going to remain uncertain. And I think that cornerback is actually a strong position for San Francisco. Maybe you got to add a third one, a nickelback. You could never, they need corner depth. I get it, but they're going to have the ability to do that over the course of this offseason. At the top, though, between Lenore and Green, you have a very good start at the cornerback position. And they began working on safety today with the signing of Quindell Johnson. That's why they signed Quindell Johnson. They needed some more bodies at the safety position. So back to the top. Quindell Johnson's been in the league for 3 years, 25-year-old player, has played on special teams more than he has on defense. That has to be a consideration in any talk of the 49ers roster. And so do the free agents, the pending free agents for San Francisco. And we're talking specifically about Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw on the defensive side of the ball. They have to fortify themselves with the 31 roster spots that are still open. 32 to begin today, 31 after Quindell Johnson has been signed. They have to fortify themselves against the possibility of some of their existing starters leaving, because that definitely is something that is a non-zero chance with Talanoa Hufanga, and you have to extend that to the linebacker unit. Anyway, really good question. I appreciate it. Let's move forward. John says the offense should have the ability to have the line able to interchange during the game to stay fresh and have the ability to go the whole hard season. Guess who preached offensive line interchangeability? Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh would substitute offensive linemen in some of his seasons. And that was revolutionary. He said, hey, defensive linemen get worn out. That's why we rotate them. Well, what about the guys fighting them all game? They're getting worn out too. They're humans as well. I'm not advocating for the 49ers to rotate offensive linemen like that. I think that there are just not enough really good offensive linemen in the league to be able to do that. But I am saying that you have to be ready to rotate them in case guys get hurt, because it's an inevitability in this football game. So it is important to be at least 8 deep at that position with passable offensive linemen. And it's very hard to get to that point given the shortage of linemen, but it's also very hard to get to and win the Super Bowl. Hardly anyone uses the franchise tag, says Proteus West. It's not cost effective. Not sure why people are so enamored with it as of late. What do people want? The franchise tag for Dre Greenlaw? I mean, let me illustrate to you how expensive franchise tags are. For the linebacker position, the franchise tag this year would cost $27 million. So we're talking about $5, $6, $7 million for Dre Greenlaw. His expiring contract was worth $8 million a year. If you were to franchise tag Dre Greenlaw, it would cost $27 million for one season. It'd be over 3 times as expensive as his existing salary. So yes, the franchise tag isn't very cost effective. The QB franchise tag, $41 million. Linebacker, very high. It's at $27 million. Wide receiver, $25.6 million. Offensive line, $25.1 million. Defensive end, $24.7 million. Defensive tackle, $23.4 million. Cornerback, $20.3 million. Safety, $19.6 million. Tight end, $14.2 million. Running back, $13.6 million. Special teams, $6.5 million. That'd be for a kicker. So all of those prices are more expensive than the prices that you're going to get on the salary cap, especially with a long-term extension. With the salary cap, with the franchise tag, you have no flexibility beyond 1 year. It is a tender that is preset by the league. If it's $27 million for the linebacker position, it's $27 million cap hit for 2025. However, if you sign a player, even if it's a 1-year deal to your own contract, you can actually add void years to stretch the cap hit out over multiple seasons. And therefore, the cap hit would be lower in 2025. In the case of Brock Purdy, I projected, a $61 million contract for him, annual average value. Well, I also projected that the 49ers, with that APY, could keep Brock Purdy's cap hit down at $15.1 million this season by stretching money into the future. You want to sign your own deals, not take NFL preset templates like the franchise tag, because by signing your own deals, you set up a situation where you can preserve salary cap space now and surf the wave of the rising cap. Chris wants Anders Carlson back. Well, maybe they could bring him back as competition for Jake Moody. I'm not so sure they're going to get rid of Jake Moody outright, but maybe competition is what the 49ers do. In fact, that's what I predicted them to do at the kicking position this offseason following those struggles. Post your questions. Let's go. I need some more of this grilled cheese, but I'll wait. I'll spare you guys right now. Don't want to make you hungry. When do I think Purdy is going to be paid? At some point before the season. Unclear to me right now. I think Brock Purdy was broadcasting the message that he wanted it done sooner rather than later, but that's going to be dependent on the 49ers as well. Ego can become a factor in these negotiations, not necessarily from Purdy, but from all the parties involved. So we'll see how it goes, because it's going to be a big negotiation. It might be the biggest in NFL history, but it's one that the 49ers absolutely must get done. You would hope that it's done before training camp, because, Ayuk was one thing. That's one where you think you can kind of skate with Ayuk not quite there at training camp. You can't without the quarterback. 49ers might have been fine this season, had other stuff not broken against them, but Brandon Ayuk's hold in and the resulting malaise of some portions of their offense definitely gave them much less room for error. And then once other stuff went wrong, that smaller room for error truly derailed the 49ers. If the quarterback is not there during training camp, then your room for error, which without Brandon Ayuk was still considerable, vanishes to essentially zero. That's why QB has so much leverage, because QB is the most important position in the game. So the 49ers, I think, know that. If they don't know that, or if they don't realize that, they need to realize it quickly. I think Brock Purdy's camp, they realize that. And I think that's why quarterback contracts often shouldn't be the hardest things to reach, because there is defined value and need, right? Like, you can't operate without the quarterback. Other positions, maybe you could gloss your way around it for a certain amount of time. You cannot operate without the quarterback in the National Football League. And I think the realities of that dynamic are going to come into play when it comes to the timing of Brock Purdy's contract extension. Yeah, the 49ers cannot franchise tag Brock Purdy this offseason. The tag isn't on the table. Brock Purdy still has a year left on his rookie contract. For people talking about the franchise tag on Purdy, that's not on the table. Franchise tag happens when the contract expires. So Purdy's got one more year, and then the franchise tag could come into the question. But Brock Purdy, it doesn't make much sense for him to even set foot in the 49ers facility, much less on the playing field, until he has a new contract. He's got one more year, and he got a pay bump thanks to the CBA because he made the Pro Bowl last year from $1 million to about $5 million. Great. He's worth 60, right? So why would he play on $5 million? He has all the leverage as the quarterback. It's not a receiver situation. He has all the leverage to sit there and say, no, I want a contract that is representative of my worth relative to my peers. I've been better than Justin Herbert. I've been better than Jared Goff. I've been better than Dak Prescott. Give me a contract that shows that. The salary cap has inflated ever since those guys signed their deals. Brock Purdy's positioning is really clear. That's what the market is. That's why Jed York said the market is the market. That was at last owners' meetings. That Jed York resigned himself to that conclusion back when Brock Purdy was coming off of his MVP finalist season. Nothing really happened with Brock Purdy this past year to give anybody that's making any serious decisions any form of pause. He still was number 7 in QBR. He still made spectacular plays. The team around him just crumbled. So anyway, this was my Brock Purdy contract extension proposal on the San Francisco Standard. This is the actual inner workings of the contract. You can see the structure that I have given the deal. It's a staggered structure. Signing bonus, option bonus 1, option bonus 2. And you could see that I was able to keep the salary cap hit at only $15.1 million in year 1. I think that the 49ers can win with this structure. Brock Purdy can win with this structure. His agent can win with this structure. You've got what's the cash flow coming in first couple of years? $70 million signing bonus plus $1 million in base salary. So $71 million flowing in right away. Second year would have $41 million flowing in the second year. So you get $112 million coming in over 2 years. 55 plus million per year over the first 2 years. Total contract value of $61 million per year. That's the APY window dressing. That's the stuff that people love to put in headlines, but it's a workable contract for both teams. If you want to go check it out, it's up on the Standard. It is right here. Just type in the $60 million man running the numbers on Brock Purdy's contract. More 49ers Q&A. Let's keep it going. Are signing bonuses included in the game check? So they just give him a big check at the beginning of the year. Signing bonus is what it sounds like. It's a big check at the beginning of the year. So the owners that are willing to put the money in escrow for a signing bonus, they get the benefit of this. They get the benefit of the staggered structure. You can only prorate it over 5 years if it's guaranteed bonus money. It's the option bonus that pays out. 40 divided by 5 equals 8 million. 30 divided by 5 equals 6 million. 70 divided by 5 equals 14 million. You can get that benefit if you're willing to pay out the guaranteed money in the NFL. What's re-signing Jordan Mason going to cost the 49ers? Probably they might have to put the second round franchise tender on him. He ran really well this past season. That would be something like $5 million a year. Might even be a little bit more now. It was about $4 million a couple years ago. We'll have to look at the franchise tender amounts. But they could also try to re-sign him before then to a deal that is structured, and it's not going to be this big, obviously, but a deal that's structured like this one, where you're pushing some of the money into the future, so you're not just dealing with the 1 year tender. So the 49ers do have some options in that regard if Jordan Mason is willing to sign them. Who do I like as the 49ers' next DC? I've said this from the start. I've liked Robert Saleh the most. Dennis Allen would have been my top backup plan. I don't think that's going to be happening. I think that they're zeroed in on Robert Saleh. It makes too much sense. It checks all the boxes. He used to be with the team. He saw success. He has experience. Robert Saleh is who we're going to be talking about the most until further notice. Elijah Mitchell should be under contract. His contract should have tolled by NFL rule because he was on injured reserve throughout the entire final year of his rookie contract. Same thing happened with Tarvarius Moore after he tore his Achilles. Remember the safety that played for the 49ers out of the Southern Mississippi? And they got him for an extra season. That was, I believe, the 2022 season with Tarvarius Moore. So in the case of Elijah Mitchell, I would expect the same contractual mechanism to take hold. I think the chances are decent the 49ers lose Josh Dobbs. He's going to look for the highest offer in free agency, and I think that playing under Kyle Shanahan with Brock Purdy brings some value in and of itself. And if another team deems that Josh Dobbs is worth more than $5 million a year, the 49ers won't be able to compete for his services. I think that the budget for the QB2 position for San Francisco is about at that $3 to $4 million mark. What makes a player a restricted free agent versus a free agent? Well, you have to put in at least 4 accrued seasons before you can hit unrestricted free agency. If you've only put in 3 accrued seasons in the NFL, you're going to be a restricted free agent. If you've only put in 2 and your contract expires, you'll be an exclusive rights free agent, which means you can only negotiate with your existing team unless they don't offer you a contract. What does Greenlaw have to prove? Greenlaw has to show that he can stay healthy. Think that the explosiveness was back. That was awesome. But it's a matter of durability now for Dre Greenlaw. Is Dre Greenlaw getting paid? Not the franchise tag, I can tell you that much. And we'll see if the 49ers decide to give him a 1-year deal or if they can find something else that works with Dre Greenlaw, or if that's going to be too rich for their tastes and he goes to another team. All right, guys. I think I've answered enough questions. I think it's time to finish the grilled cheese before it gets a little bit too cold. Everybody, thanks for watching. We went through it all today. Quindell Johnson, why San Francisco signed him. Those are his career snaps in the Chicago uniform. Ronnie Bell to the Lions. Good little day of news. And we're going to continue following the Robert Saleh saga as this week continues. Thanks for everything. It was fun. We will talk to you all soon.